Good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on when you're watching this. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine that everything we've ever built, every skyscraper, every monument, every piece of plastic, gets swallowed by the Earth and chewed up over 100 million years. What would be left? That question is the beating heart of what we're exploring today, the Silurian Hypothesis. It's a thought experiment that's equal parts science, science fiction, and a surprisingly humbling mirror held up to our own civilization. And here's the best part. The scientists who proposed it don't even believe it's true. Here's our roadmap for today's expedition. We'll start with the basics. What on earth, literally, is the Silurian Hypothesis? Then we'll meet a certain reptilian species from Doctor Who, because yes, this hypothesis is named after lizard people from a BBC show. From there, we'll dive into the 2018 paper by Frank and Gavin Schmidt that started it all. Then we'll wrestle with deep time. 100 million years is absurdly, comically long. And finally, we'll turn the question around and ask, what would remain of us if we vanished tomorrow? So let's start at the beginning. What actually is the Silurian Hypothesis? I promise it's not a conspiracy theory about ancient aliens building the pyramids. It's much weirder and much more scientifically interesting than that. Frank and Gavin Schmidt didn't dig up a lost city or decode an ancient tablet. They simply asked a question. A question so provocative that it forces us to rethink everything we assume about civilization and permanence. And the best part, they don't even believe the answer is yes. They wrote the paper precisely because the question itself is so powerful. Here's the core idea, and I need you to appreciate the intellectual honesty here. In 2018, Frank and Gavin Schmidt published a paper that asked a deceptively simple question. If an advanced industrial civilization had thrived on Earth millions of years before humans showed up, would we even be able to tell? Now here's the twist. They don't actually believe such a civilization existed. Frank himself told The Atlantic, and I quote, "It's not often you write a paper proposing a hypothesis that you don't support." The real goal was to figure out the forensic signatures we should look for, both in Earth's own geological record and on distant exoplanets. It's like they wrote a detective manual for a crime they're pretty sure never happened, but if it did, they want to know how to spot it. And the name? Well, scientists are nerds. And this is a glorious example. The Silurians are a race of intelligent reptilian humanoids from the long-running BBC series Doctor Who. In the show's lore, they predate humanity by millions of years. They were Earth's first advanced civilization, driven underground by a catastrophe and hibernating until modern times. When Frank and Schmidt needed a catchy name for their hypothesis about pre-human civilizations, the Doctor Who reference was too perfect to resist. I mean, come on. Lizard people who ruled the Earth before us? That's exactly the concept. Discovery magazine even noted with evident delight, lest you think scientists aren't nerds. The name is playful, but it's also genuinely descriptive. Let's meet the two scientists who dared to ask this question, because the pairing is what makes this paper so potent. On one side, Frank, an astrophysicist at the University of Rochester who spends his time thinking about civilizations on exoplanets and what techno-signatures they might leave behind. On the other, Gavin Schmidt, a climate modeler at NASA's Goddard Institute who studies hyperthermals, those mysterious, ancient spikes in global temperature that show up in the geological record. Put them together, and you've got the perfect team. One guy who thinks about detecting alien civilizations across the cosmos, and another who reads Earth's fever chart from millions of years ago. They realized their two disciplines were asking the same question from different angles. Now we need to talk about time, and I don't mean regular time, the kind where you're late for a meeting. I mean deep time, geological time. The kind of timescale that makes the Great Pyramid of Giza look like it was finished last Tuesday. 100 million years is so vast that entire mountain ranges rise and erode to nothing in that span. Continents drift across oceans, species evolve, dominate, and go extinct. And somewhere in all that churn, the Silurian Hypothesis asks, could an entire civilization have been ground to dust so thoroughly that we can't find a single rivet? 100 million years. Let that number sink in for a moment. The dinosaurs went extinct 66 million years ago, and we're talking about a window almost twice that long. Homo sapiens, our entire species, from the first anatomically modern humans to this presentation right now, has only been around for about 300,000 years. That's 0.3% of the time scale we're discussing. All of recorded human history, from the invention of cuneiform writing in Sumer to this very moment, spans about 5,000 years. The Silurian hypothesis asks us to imagine a civilization that could have risen, thrived for perhaps 1 million years, and vanished so completely that 100 million years later, the most intelligent species on the planet can't find a single trace. So what could possibly survive that long? Not buildings. Concrete crumbles to sand. Not bones, really. Fossils are rare and fragile over these timescales, and most organisms never fossilize at all. Frank and Schmidt identified a handful of forensic signatures that might persist. Carbon isotope anomalies from burning fossil fuels that, though we see shift, gets locked into sedimentary rock. Temperature spikes recorded in deep sea cores, what Schmidt calls hyperthermals. Radioactive elements from nuclear activity. Plutonium-244 has a half-life of 80 million years, so some would remain. And possibly weird plastic-like sedimentary layers, though even plastics would be metamorphosed beyond easy recognition. The irony is brutal. The most lasting evidence of an advanced civilization might not be its monuments. It might be its pollution. This brings us to a real geological mystery that Schmidt knows intimately. The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PETM, about 56 million years ago. The planet's temperature shot up by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius in a few thousand years, which sounds slow to us, but in geological terms that's basically instantaneous. Massive carbon release, somewhere between 2 and 7,000 gigatons. Ocean acidification, mass extinctions. Scientists mostly attribute it to volcanic activity and destabilized methane hydrates. But here's the unsettling part Schmidt points out. If an industrial civilization did cause a carbon spike 56 million years ago, the geological signature would look pretty much exactly like the PTM. Now, nobody is seriously claiming the PTM was an ancient industrial revolution. But the fact that we can't rule it out is precisely the point. And now the uncomfortable part, because this thought experiment isn't really about ancient lizard civilizations at all. It's about us. The Silurian hypothesis is a mirror. If we vanish tomorrow, climate collapse, asteroid pandemic, take your pick, what would remain of humanity in 100 million years? Not the pyramids, not the skyscrapers, not our art, our literature, our culture. The most likely signature of Homo sapiens would be a thin, dark line in the rock, a carbon layer marking the Anthropocene, the geological blink when we burned everything and changed the climate. That's our legacy, a smudge in the stratigraphy. Rich Cohen, writing in the Paris Review, captured the haunting conclusion of the Silurian hypothesis in one devastating passage. Not the pyramids, those will be dust. Not the skyscrapers, crushed and subducted into the mantle. Not styrofoam, not Shakespeare, not the collected works of human genius. In the end, after 100 million years of geological grinding, the only evidence that Homo sapiens ever existed might be a thin, dark line in the rock, a carbon layer. That's it. That's our entire legacy. And that realization is simultaneously terrifying and weirdly liberating. The Silurian hypothesis doesn't just ask whether someone came before us. It asks whether anyone will know we were ever here at all. And so here we are at the end of our expedition. The big question, right? Were there Silurians, lizard people building cities 100 million years ago? Almost certainly not. Adam Frank himself said, "It's not often you write a paper proposing a hypothesis you don't support." But that was never the point. The Silurian hypothesis is a mirror. It asks us to imagine ourselves erased, ground down by deep time, reduced to a strange carbon spike in the rock record, a fever the planet once had and then forgot. The real question isn't whether someone came before us, it's whether anyone, millions of years from now, will know we were here at all. So, what trace are you leaving?